Have you ever followed Ned Kelly's life through Victoria? Me either. Let's go. Beverage at the Kelly family home. Ned Kelly was born to John and Ellen Kelly around about late 1854 to 1855. This is the home that John Kelly built in around about 1860. John Kelly was an immigrant from Ireland, sent over to Australia as a convict. He met his wife Ellen, they had their children, and one of them was Ned. The home, full timber weatherboards, packed dirt floor. This is where the family lived and also worked trying to make a living with their dairy production, making butter in this part of the home. Ned attended school in Beveridge at the local Catholic church, and Ned's dad John, or Red Kelly, went to the local tavern, which we'll go visit as well. The tavern was built by Andrew Beveridge in 1841, and John Kelly drank here up until about 1864, a year before he died. John actually did a good job on his house. Not bad. The carpenter in me is impressed with John's work. In 1864, when Ned was 8 years old, John and Ellen Kelly packed up and moved from Beveridge to Avenel. In 1865, however, John was sentenced to 6 months hard labour for stealing some meat. Then, in 1866, John Kelly passed away. Avenel's significant to Ned's life. When he was 11 years old, he saved a young boy from drowning. The significance of this was the recognition from the family, as we'll find out later in the story. At this historic bridge over Hughes Creek, 150 metres downstream, is where Ned saved Richard Shelton's life, a schoolboy who fell off a makeshift footbridge into the water, and Ned helped him out. The family awarded Ned with a green sash that played a pivotal part in Ned's history when he reached Glenrowan in a few years' time. John Red Kelly was sentenced to 6 months hard labour for stealing some meat, the hungry bugger. And in 1866, Red died and Ned was left without a father. John's body remains here in the Avenel Cemetery. In 1866, John Kelly was 46 years old and died, and his body lays here at the Avenel Cemetery. The young man who was rescued by Ned Kelly was Richard Sheldon, and this was the Sheldon family home. It was a Royal Mail Hotel back in the 1860s, servicing the people coming and going from the goldfields. The house and the structure is still alive today. After Ned's dad died in Avenel, the family moved to Greta, where they acquired some land, and this is where Ned's run-in with the law all started. At age 12, Ned and the family, without their father, moved here to Greta, in a homestead right at that tree there. From the age of 14 though, Ned was getting into a little bit of trouble. He was charged with assault and spent 10 days in the lockup over in Benalla. Shortly after, he was charged with being a bushranger's accomplice when he was hanging around with the known bushranger, Harry Power. After this, Ned was charged again for assault on a travelling salesman and did 5 months jail. Shortly after being released, he was caught riding a stolen horse and did another 3 years jail, finally returning to the property in Greta in 1874. But in 1878, however, a warrant for arrest was issued on Ned's brother Dan and his cousin Jack for horse stealing. Because of this, Constable Alexandra Fitzpatrick came to this property with the sole intention to arrest Dan and his cousin. During this, there was an altercation where the constable claimed he was shot by Ned Kelly and hit over the head by Ellen Kelly. After this, Ellen was arrested and given 3 years for attempted murder. Ned and Dan, however, were now on the run. This is where their outlaw life began. Here at the cemetery in Greta, most of the Kelly family are buried here. We have Mum Ellen, her children Ned and Dan, and 3 other siblings all buried here in unmarked graves. Ned's body was the last to come here. Ned was buried at the old Melbourne jail back in 1880. In 2013, Ned was brought here from the Pentridge prison grounds and buried next to his mother. He had not been next to his mother for 133 years. Benalla was an important part of Ned's life throughout the 60s and 70s. Not only was Ned in trouble with the law twice in Benalla, once as a 14-year-old in 1869 and once in his early 20s in 1877, but it was also the central headquarters for the police manhunt after Ned and the gang were all named as outlaws. Here at the Benalla courthouse, Ned visited a couple of times. Once in 1869 when he was 14 years old, charged with assault on a Chinese immigrant named Ah Fook. The same words my British-born father uses when he hurts himself. And then Ned came back in his early 20s in 1877 for his second charge of being drunk and disorderly, where he fled from police to a local store, had an altercation, and then was arrested again. In this very cell, Ned was a 14-year-old and he was held here for 11 days while waiting his trial on Ah Fook. Eventually the charges were dropped and Ned was released. Here at the Benalla Costume and Kelly Museum, they have Ned's famous green sash after he saved young Richard Shelton. They have a replica of their armour. They have the type of plough that the Kellys were stealing the metal from to make their armour, and then the portable holding cell that Ned was in before his trial. Here in the Benalla Cemetery lays the body of Joe Byrne, one of the Kelly gang members. He was born in 1856 and died at the Glenrowan Inn incident in 1880. Also in this cemetery are another 2 victims of that same Glenrowan siege. One member of the public who was shot by police, and the inn's owner, the Republican's son, was also shot in the same incident. And they're all buried here in Benalla. One man who had an influence on Ned's life was Harry Power, a middle-aged bushranger who was friends with the Kelly family. We'll head to Power's Lookout, where his hideout was located and where he looked over the valley to see who was coming and going. Harry Power was familiar to the Kelly family, especially familiar to Ned. Harry taught Ned a few things, bit of bushcraft, bit of bushranging, bit of being bad maybe. Up here at Power's Lookout was where Harry Power hid out from the law. Unfortunately, in June 1870, Harry's luck ran out. One of the locals exposed his location, received a reward, and the local police came up here to Harry's hideout and got the man while he was sleeping. Harry didn't become a bushranger until he was in his 50s. After he was caught here in his hideout, served his time, Harry was off trying to live his life. His body was found though, dead, in October 1891 in the Murray River, presumed drowned near Swan Hill. Wonder if this is where Harry slept. Or maybe Harry hung around in here. In late 1878, after the incident in Greta with the constable Alexander Fitzpatrick, the Kelly brothers were in hiding and warrants out for their arrest. The Kelly brothers were high in the ranges around Mansfield. 4 police officers came down to the Wombat Ranges in the hope to search and arrest the Kelly brothers. The Kellys heard gunshots. So one day they went down, located the police camp and ambushed the police officers. And this is where the story got really serious. Here at Stringybark Creek in late 1878, police set up camp with the hope and the mission to catch the Kelly brothers. Whilst they were camped here and the Kellys were hiding out nearby, they heard gunshots, come down, realised it was the police camp, came into the police camp and shot dead Michael Scanlon and Thomas Lonigan. Sergeant Michael Kennedy was able to run away but was shot down by the Kellys, and their other party was able to escape and raise the alarm. From that point on, in Mansfield, they issued a warrant for their arrest. Soon as they didn't hand themselves in, they put a reward on their heads, dead or alive. Here at Stringybark, there's a Kelly loop walk to honour the fallen policemen. Back there is what they call the police tree. The 3 police officers that Ned Kelly shot and killed at Stringybark in 1878 are buried here in the dead centre of Mansfield at the cemetery. Sergeant Michael Kennedy, aged 36, Mounted Constable Michael Scanlon, aged 35, and Mounted Constable Thomas Lonigan, aged 34. After 147 years of resting in peace, the gravesite and the headstones are starting to show their age. 2 years after the police murder at Stringybark Creek in the Wombat Ranges, the town of Mansfield erected a monument to the fallen police officers here in 1880, which still stands today proud in the middle of the street. After the police shootings at Stringybark Creek by the Kelly gang, the Mansfield court ordered the Kelly gang to hand themselves in on the 12th of November 1878 at this very courthouse. If the Kelly gang chose not to do so and not to surrender to the court, they would become outlaws and welcome to be shot on sight without challenge. After the Stringybark police shootings by the Kelly gang in October 1879, the gang staged 2 robberies. One in Euroa at the National Bank and one just outside of Euroa at Young Husband Station. The gang took hostages, stole money and went back into hiding in the Strathbogie Ranges. In December 1878, while the Kelly gang had already held up the Young Husband Station at Faithful Creek, they decided to cut the main communication line to Euroa, and while Joe Byrne stayed at the Young Husband Station with all their hostages, the other 3 members of the Kelly gang came to this site to rob the National Bank, where they took over $2,000 home with them. Not a bad payday. Kelly gang had a plan. They were going to murder their friend Aaron Sherritt for being a police informer, which would lure all the police on a big manhunt to come find the Kelly gang. This is where the well-known incident of the Kelly armour and the big shootout at Glenrowan occurred. At the train station, in this exact same location, is where the police officers got off the train to enter the siege in 1880 with the Kelly gang. This is also after that siege ended, where Ned received his much needed medical attention. Here in Glenrowan at the Anne Jones Inn is where the final siege happened between the Kelly gang and the local authorities. The Kelly gang were planning on to derail the train, except once they had their hostages inside and they let some of them go, one of those hostages alerted the train driver to the derailed track. Therefore, the derailment didn't occur. The police came and a shootout occurred between the Kelly gang and the local police. 3 of the Kelly gang members, Joe, Dan and Steve, all died here where Ned Kelly was captured and then taken to Melbourne jail. At this point was Ned's final capture place. After the main siege at the Glenrowan Inn, police finally shot Ned's legs, and this is where he lay and where they arrested him and then took him to the station to have medical assistance. Here at this very courthouse in 1880, Ned received his sentence for the police killings at Stringybark Creek and was sentenced to death by hanging at the old Melbourne jail. Ned was held in these very cells when he was 15 in 1871 for charges of horse stealing. His mother also spent time in these cells. After Ned Kelly was charged with receiving a stolen horse and sentenced to 3 years, he spent a couple of months here at Beechworth Prison before he was transferred closer to Melbourne to Pentridge. Dan Kelly, Joe Byrne and Steve Hart all lost their outlaw identity and their lives in Glenrowan at that final siege in June 1880. Ned, on the other hand, went to Beechworth, to court, was sent to Melbourne jail and was sentenced to death by hanging, which occurred in November 1880. That concluded the Kelly story.
It doesn't.
Why you?
What, did you stop?
No, still going, go.
And he's buried here at the Avenue Cemetery. That sounds so one at Youngbloods. Here at the Benalla Courthouse.
He's a bit intimidating looking.
We'll talk more about Howie, you